A question for Representative Hagan. When you refer to the 46% increase, is that a personal income tax increase?
Yes, yes.
So I haven't really heard any groups talking about a strict tax increase to fix this hole. Most of the time you hear it call it, some kind of a balanced approach, which taxes cuts. I also haven't heard anyone just say income tax. There's other taxes as well. Why focus your study of this area in this way?
Well, we tried to break it down in the 50% versus the whole so that we could look at contributed cuts versus the taxes as well. And the income tax, when looked at, had shown the same levels of percentages as others.
Right. The report that came back showed a full-strength balancing proposal that would cost a 46% income tax increase. It also showed about half that if you were to use half spending reductions and half tax increases, so that would be in the 23% range. Furthermore, just looking at the expected sales tax revenues next year over against the income tax revenues, they're actually anticipated to produce very similar amounts of revenue. So the sales tax is just slightly, I think, under $8 billion, and the income tax is slightly over $8 billion. So you'd have to, if you went with the sales tax, for example, your percentage increase would be very close, and actually a little bit higher, almost 50%, if you were to do a full strength sales tax balance. Various ways using some of the talk that's been given about tax expenditures, which would, I don't think, be, you couldn't balance with that, but you could supplement your general tax increase or lower it a little bit by shifting the tax burden around. Those are things that have been proposed in various testimony.
Representative Hagan, you said that if we did a tax increase now, it would be most harmful to the lowest income families. If it was an income tax, though, it's a progressive tax, so the lowest income people would not be subject to an increase.
The numbers that we have projected actually show the largest percent. Maybe you'll be able to further explain that. He's a little more institutional knowledge than I am the subject.
Well, actually, that one's hard to explain. I don't even quite understand it, but the tax department said in their report that because of the way tax credits play, that the percentage increase would be slightly higher for the lower income class, the brackets. The lower brackets would have a little bit higher. It doesn't make sense to me, but it's how granular the tax department is when they do analyses. They took it to the next level and said that tax credits play into the way the percentage would actually be realized on the bottom line for taxpayers. I find that a little hard to understand myself.
Right now, we see the tax burden just being shifted because in a lot of our local communities, we're seeing ballot measures to try to make up for this for schools, for fire and police, and more communities are saying they're going to have to raise taxes to keep the status quo. So if you've got taxes at the local community to make up for what's being cut at the state level, isn't that just a wash or even worse?
Well, I don't agree with that perspective, although it's obviously one that you have to consider in terms of the balance of the whole package. The administration's proposal, which is what we're still considering here as we go forward, actually has 5 categories of strategies to fill this gap. So it isn't like they have a totally unbalanced singular proposal. Because of the fact that the state executes most of its services through local government, 85% of our general revenue fund is transferred down into the local communities, they are our partners. So therefore, you have to include them in the equation, and they are included. But there are, of the 5 categories of budget balancing strategies that are employed for next year in the administration's proposal, one of them does involve diverting revenue that is being shared now with local governments, but it isn't disproportionate to, at least arguably, to other strategies. For example, state agency spending is being reduced substantially in the first year and then further in the second year. So there is some balance to that. There's Medicaid cost containment. that is being proposed, that there's a whole class of changes. And then there is revenue growth that is anticipated, which helps to fill the gap as well. And finally, in the first year, almost a third of the strategy involves working off of this one-time revenue sources. So there are one-time revenues in the first year at almost a third of the package. In the second year, it goes down to 3%. So there is a migration off that. The question of local governments increasing taxes in response to this proposal would be really more in the category that we're saying no to. We're saying no to tax increases, and we believe that there's more flexibility and more opportunities to contain costs by using a balancing strategy that focuses on spending and reducing that, controlling it.
Well, you know, they say that there isn't. They say there are already sharing services that Senate Bill 5 won't save them that much money. You know, they're saying the opposite. So how do you answer that?
Well, there are no silver bullets in this. It's going to be pain shared across all the partners. And, you know, some partners are saying they're doing good things, and that's true. But we're going to have to extend our reach for these shared services, and we're going to have to do further trimming. And I know that's going to be difficult, and we're concerned about some of the leanest operations in local government and our local partners, because this isn't all about local governments. There's also hospitals and nursing homes and other kinds of local facilities that are our partners as well. And some of them are pretty lean already. So this will be a continuing challenge as we work through the budget making process over the weeks that are still ahead.
We're talking about tax increases today, but do you anticipate being able to find any additional revenue from other sources above and beyond what the Kasich proposal includes right now?
Well, we'll talk about that on Thursday. I don't know that I have an explanation in answer to that question right now.
The fact that Republicans are united against tax increases is not particularly newsworthy. That's been a Republican position. Obviously, Republicans run the show here at the State House. I guess the bigger question is combined federal, state, and local taxes. That tax amount is at its lowest in 50 years combined. The upper bracket at 35% is much lower than the Reagan era 50% during the 1980s. At what point do Republicans put potential tax increases on the table? You spoke about, Representative Umstead, you spoke about pain a few minutes ago. At what point do Republicans put tax increases on the table to kind of take care of some of this pain with $8 billion missing dollars in the state budget?
Well, obviously not at this point. That's what we're standing here to talk about. The number that I think you're referring to is an aggregate national number. And the question is, how does Ohio fit into that? And that's where our concern lies, and why in 2005 we did a very difficult tax reform package that actually did raise some taxes at the same time that we repealed others and lowered still others in a way that wasn't a major tax reduction. But it still has not positioned Ohio to be competitive in the tax area. One of the few areas of the state has direct policy control. So we think our work is not done in the tax reduction area in order to get our state in a more competitive position. So I don't think the trend, I mean, there has been a downtrend in Ohio, and that's been deliberate in terms of our efforts. But the other part of the downtrend was not deliberate. Our economy took a major hit. We lost over about 17% of our state general revenue fund taxes in just 2 years. That's pretty much unprecedented, and is why we are facing such a difficult situation now. In part, we should have faced it 2 years ago, but the failure to address this straight on has brought us to a very sharp and difficult landing here. We've known for 2 years that this kind of a budget was coming at us, but there have been few strategies employed to soften the landing. So we're doing the best we can to make lemonade out of a very difficult budget situation.
Senator Olson, this is for you. You've been here for a while. A lot of the local groups are saying we would not be in this budget mess today if it were not for the tax decreases that the legislature has been giving, the Republican legislature has been giving over the past 10 years. Can you talk about that?
Sure. And I've heard that argument from before the day we even passed the package. It was being predicted that it would be a major problem for our state. However, if you look at the facts and what has actually transpired since 2005, you get a different picture than is portrayed in the question you posed. The first 4 years of the transition into these tax changes actually saw a dampening of the growth in state tax revenues. We were seeing a little bit of growth instead of more growth that would have occurred if the tax reductions weren't in place. That was the trend line that was in place. And to the extent that that dampening continued during the deep recession that we experienced, it did contribute to our loss of revenues. But it wasn't primarily what was going on. Maybe it was 20% of what happened when we lost 12.2% of our tax revenues in 1 year. We probably, if we hadn't had the tax reduction, maybe we would have had a 10% loss. The dampening effect was in the 2 to 3% range per year as that was phased in. And then in the second year, we would have lost another 8%, except for the rate being retroactively changed of the state income tax reduction. And that led to a 5% reduction instead of 8%, which is what would have occurred. So you can kind of get a sense that 2 to 3% impact is what was going on before the economy dropped. So it was mostly about the economy dropping, and it dropped deeply in Ohio.
One of the arguments you often hear from these groups that are pushing for